Shopping for a subcompact tractor in 2026 can get overwhelming fast, which is why we spent way too many hours digging through spec sheets and price lists so you don't have to. And yes, if your favorite brand isn't on this list, it's because your tractor stinks. Kidding. I'm kidding. But stick around, because by the end of this video, I'll tell you which one of these 5 tractors is actually worth your hard-earned money, not just which one looks best on paper. Here's the thing. Almost every tractor on this list lands somewhere between 19 and 25 horsepower. So the real differences come down to price, lift capacity, and warranty coverage, not raw power. So stick around for the full breakdown. And if this kind of content helps you out, do me a favor and like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Now let's get into it. Kicking things off is the Kubota BX23S. And if you've shopped for a tractor before, there's a good chance someone already pointed you toward this one. Kubota has built such a massive dealer network across the country that it's actually been the best-selling compact tractor in the entire United States, from 2018 all the way through 2022, according to industry sales data. So reliability and parts availability are basically built into the brand at this point. Under the hood, you're getting a 21.6 horsepower, 3-cylinder Kubota diesel engine displacing 898 cubic centimeters. And yes, this is a hydrostatic transmission, so no clutching required. As for price, you're looking at around $19,900 MSRP for the base tractor. But once you start adding a loader, that number climbs past $28,000 pretty quickly. And if you go all the way to a full tractor loader backhoe package, you're looking at roughly $25,850, depending on your dealer. One thing I really like about this engine is that it's Tier 4 final compliant without needing a diesel particulate filter, which means you completely skip those annoying regeneration cycles that show up on some competing tractors. The backhoe attachment also uses a no-spill coupler system, so you don't end up with hydraulic fluid all over your driveway every time you swap implements, which is a small detail to me. Lift capacity comes in around 573 to 680 pounds, depending on configuration. And if you spring for that backhoe package, it can dig down roughly 6 feet deep at an operating weight of about 2,600 pounds. Kubota backs all of this with a 2-year or 1,000-hour powertrain warranty, which is solid, though not the longest on this list if I'm being honest. The BX23S isn't the flashiest tractor here, but if digging and heavy-duty work are on your radar, this is probably the one you want to start with. Next up is a tractor that might just be even more popular than the Kubota, at least here in the States, and it comes from a name everybody recognizes. Next up is the John Deere 1025R, and there's a good chance this is the tractor your neighbor already owns, because John Deere has more dealers scattered across the country than almost anyone else on this list, which honestly goes a long way when you need a part fast. Under the hood, you get a Yanmar-built 23.9 horsepower diesel engine, and that specific number isn't random. John Deere kept this engine just under the 25 horsepower mark on purpose, so it avoids the EPA Tier 4 final emissions requirements, which means no diesel particulate filter and no diesel exhaust fluid to mess with, which is honestly a smart move on their part. Once you start pricing this thing out with a loader, you're realistically looking at somewhere between $23,500 and $26,000, and that's the real-world number, not the lowball figure you might see floating around online. One of the standout features here is the optional 120R loader, which can lift 843 pounds, and that's about 28% more than what you'd get on a comparable Kubota BX2380. So if loader work is your main priority, this tractor genuinely competes. It also comes with cruise control, a tilt steering wheel, and a small built-in toolbox, which are nice touches you don't always get at this price point these days. You also get John Deere's Auto Connect mid-mower deck, which locks into place in under a minute without you ever leaving the seat. Now, I do have to mention this because it's worth knowing there was a brake system recall back in 2024 on certain 1025R models. So if you're buying used, definitely ask the dealer whether that repair was already completed. John Deere backs the 1025R with a 6-year powertrain warranty, which beats the Kubota by a full 4 years. If I'm being honest, this tractor is fantastic for mowing large properties and frequent loader work. But if heavy digging is what you need, the Kubota probably still wins that fight. Up next is the tractor that's going to be the easiest one on your wallet. And that tractor is the Mahindra eMax 20S, which, as I just teased, is genuinely the most affordable option on this entire list, with an MSRP that typically lands somewhere between $15,000 and $17,000, depending on configuration. That honestly makes it thousands cheaper than both the Kubota and the John Deere we just talked about. Now, before you assume that means it's underpowered, let's talk specs, because the eMax 20S runs a 19.4 horsepower 3-cylinder diesel engine. And yes, that's the lowest number on this list, but Mahindra actually built this engine with over 30% more displacement than competing engines in the same horsepower class, which means it runs quieter and at a lower RPM, so you're not sacrificing as much as you'd think. You do get a hydrostatic transmission standard, along with skid steer style loader couplers, which makes swapping front attachments quick and painless. 3-point lift capacity comes in around 617 to 680 pounds, depending on the exact trim, which is right in line with what you get from the more expensive tractors on this list, so that's a real win for the price. The rear PTO also spins at a standard 540 RPM, so most 3-point implements will work. One thing I genuinely like is that Mahindra gives you the highest built-in weight in its class, which translates to better traction and stability, especially if you're running it on wet ground or hilly terrain. Mahindra backs this tractor with a 2-year or 1,000-hour warranty covering the drivetrain, hydraulics, and electronics. That matches Kubota, but falls short of what John Deere offers, if I'm being honest. The eMax 20S isn't going to win any horsepower contests, and the dealer network isn't quite as deep as Kubota or Deere either. But if you're working with a tighter budget and you don't need the absolute top end of this category, this tractor genuinely punches above its price point. Now let's move on to a brand with a much longer history in farming equipment than any of the names we've covered so far. That brand is Massey Ferguson, and specifically, we're talking about the GC 1700 series, which has recently been rebranded as the 1GC series. This company has actually been building tractors for over 170 years, which gives it a level of heritage that none of the other names on this list can really claim. Under the hood, you get a 1.1-liter Iseki 3-cylinder diesel engine putting out up to 24.5 horsepower, and like every other tractor on this list, it comes standard with 4-wheel drive and a hydrostatic transmission, so there's no learning curve if you've driven any of the others. Where Massey Ferguson really separates itself, though, is comfort, because features that are optional upgrades on basically every other tractor here come standard on this one. Things like a premium seat with armrests, push-button cruise control, and a redesigned operator station with a wider, taller seat for all-day comfort. There's even a 12-volt outlet built right into the internal storage compartment, so you can run electric attachments without rigging up your own wiring. As for price, the 1GC lands right in the middle of the pack, typically more than the Mahindra, but generally comparable to or slightly less than a similarly equipped Kubota or John Deere, depending on which dealer you're working with and what package you choose. You can also get it as a tractor with loader, or go all the way up to a full loader and backhoe combo, just like we saw with the Kubota. One thing I will say is that Massey Ferguson dealers aren't quite as common as Kubota or John Deere dealers in a lot of regions, so parts and service might take a little longer to track down. If I'm being honest, this tractor is a fantastic pick. If comfort and a smoother all-day operator experience matter more to you than raw digging power or brand recognition. Now let's get into the last tractor on our main list before I show you that bonus pick and the comparison graph I promised you at the very start. Rounding out our main list is the New Holland Workmaster 25S, And this one's actually kind of interesting because New Holland has traditionally focused on bigger tractors in that 30 to 50 horsepower range. So this subcompact is a relatively newer addition to their lineup as they push into smaller properties. Under the hood, you get 24.7 gross horsepower, with 17.2 of that making it to the PTO. It runs through a 2-range hydrostatic dual pedal transmission with standard 4-wheel drive, so there's no shift lever and no clutching to worry about. The biggest reason this tractor stands out to me, though, is the warranty. New Holland backs the Workmaster 25S with what they call Boomer Guard 6, which gives you 2 full years of bumper-to-bumper coverage, plus an extra 4 years on top of that specifically for the powertrain, which works out to 6 total years of protection. And that's longer than every single tractor we've covered so far. On the lifting side, the optional 100 LC loader gets you close to 700 pounds of lift capacity to full height. And the 3-point hitch is rated anywhere from 728 up to 992 pounds, depending on how it's configured. As for price, once you start bundling a loader and a mower deck onto this thing, the cost lands right around what you'd pay for a similarly equipped Kubota or John Deere. So it's not exactly a budget pick, but it's competitive for what you get. One thing worth mentioning is that because this tractor is newer to the subcompact category, there just isn't as much long-term resale data out there yet, compared to something like the Kubota BX series, which has been around for decades. If I'm being honest, the Workmaster 25S is probably the safest financial bet on this list, simply because of how much that 6-year warranty protects you against expensive repairs down the road. Now that you've seen all 5 of these side by side with their specs and prices, it's time to talk about which one actually deserves your money. So here's where it all lands. If you want pure reliability and resale value, go with the Kubota BX23S. If your budget is tight, the Mahindra eMax 20S genuinely outperforms its price tag. And if a long warranty matters most, the New Holland Workmaster 25S is your safest bet. But for most people, the BX23S is actually worth your money because it balances price, capability, and long-term durability better than anything else here. That's our list for 2026. Let me know in the comments which one you'd buy, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and catch the next one.